What's up, Bitcoin Radio? It's your man, Joe Blackburn. I'm coming at you. I've got Tone Vays here. We're going to have a little bit of fun today. We're going to kind of break down a little bit of what Tone's been doing, how he kind of got started, and, you know, what he sees, what's happening right now in the space, you know. Tone has been a Wall Street trader. He was a vice president at JP Morgan Chase. He watched the 2008 financial crash. He's got a degree, his master's degree from Florida State. Everybody knows I'm a Gator fan. Tone, don't worry. You know, but no, obviously, you know, awesome that you got a master's degree, and I'll let you kind of get to that in a second. You're an expert in economic trends, trading, risk analysis, cryptocurrency, and, you know, one of my favorite things that I know you really well by is the 3 different debates that you had with Roger Ver. Obviously, there's a lot in between all those things, but welcome to the show, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Hey, thanks, Joe. Glad to be on the show.
So, Tone, you've kind of got this persona that I think most people who watch you and who follow you and who are your fans, I think they would probably agree with what my statement about is what I'm about to say here, is that you just kind of encompassed everything there really is in financial trading and financial, you know, risk, kind of as your introduction, you know, explained. But kind of let's just start with 2008, man. You were sitting there, you were the vice president at JP Morgan Chase. You know, you got this probably pretty lucrative, great, fun job, and then you watch the market crash, dude. Like, how, like, that was before Bitcoin even existed. Just take me through those first early days, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, in 2008, when the crash went down, I wasn't at JP Morgan. I was at Bear Stearns. So I was actually at a bank that went down. But because of the unit that I worked in, my job wasn't in that much of jeopardy. And JP Morgan absorbed our unit when they took over what the disaster that was Bear Stearns. And at the time I got that job, if I'm going to back up a little bit, I got that job in very early 2017, and it was in the risk analysis department. So my career on Wall Street wasn't exactly trading. It was building risk models for trading. Trading is something that was my interest. And after getting that master's degree in financial engineering, I think I graduated 04, 05, something like that. And after that, I got into trading. I learned technical analysis. I learned the stuff that I teach today. I learned technical analysis. I learned how to trade with options. And I started making my career as an options trader while being an adjunct college professor, because I didn't even have work experience to get one of those good Goldman Sachs jobs. So I tried making a career as a trader. And like many traders that I know that are successful, you eventually end up, you know, destroying and blowing up your portfolio. And this is the best way to learn risk analysis and money management. And what you're doing as a trader, it's better when you do it with your own money than with other people's money. And then you learned your lesson. So I learned that lesson by blowing up my first trading account. I forgot what I didn't have much money back then. Maybe it was like 20,000, maybe it was like 50, whatever I've saved. And that's because I was shorting the real estate market as of the middle of 2006, shorting the home builders, shorting the mortgage companies, and the market, and it was just irrational. And it kept going up, and it destroyed my portfolio. And then I went and got a job in early 2007 in Bear Stearns, which a year and a half later imploded because of the financial crisis that I was actually shorting. Now, the stocks of those companies that I was shorting actually started to go down in early 07. So I was literally 6 months too early, just like I was 6 months too late buying Bitcoin, or it would have been a whole different life. You know, I could have bought it 100x lower if I got in just 6 months earlier, because it was really starting going up at that time. So watching it all go down, that was like the first real financial crash that affected my adult career. Because when the first one happened of the dot-coms, I was still in college, in undergrad, wasn't even studying business or finance. I was studying geology back then. But I went back and I researched everything in the dot-com crash, and it was so similar to what happened in the 2017 ICO bubble. But that was basically my history into it. And then I stayed at JP Morgan for a few years, moved on to another company after that called MSCI. And then I left MSCI, I think in 2012 or something like that. And one of the reasons why I left MSCI is because these big companies have restrictions on trading. It was very difficult for me to just trade anything I wanted because of the proprietary information that I was getting. So the last job that I got was this small, tiny company that was also building risk analysis software, but we were selling the software. We weren't processing positions in-house. And because we were selling the software, the company had zero insider information on any positions of any hedge funds or anything. And I had zero restrictions on my trading. And that's when I was working and trading, which is difficult to do. I quit my job to be a trader in 2015, but I was already becoming popular in the crypto space. And now I really enjoy traveling the world, educating about Bitcoin, and too busy to trade at the moment. But I teach people how to trade, and trading isn't going anywhere. I can come back to it in 20 years when I officially retire, and it's all going to be the same.
No, agreed. And actually, I'll go ahead and bring this question up. And it's something I was probably going to ask a little bit later, but it kind of makes sense right now. In June, I think it was June. It could have been July. I think that you were quoted on one of the news sites, probably Cointelegraph, because I think you had a spot there for some time, about how there's really no evidence that the crypto winter is over. First off, I mean, although I assume that maybe that still remains true in your thought process, I probably should ask first. I mean, is that still kind of what you feel like where the market's at?
Okay, so the crypto winter being over for me is still a little bit of a challenge. Now, back when we started this whole bear market in early 2018, I had three specific price targets to the downside. It was 5,000, 3,000, and down to that $1,300 to $1,500 area. I also had several time targets. My earliest time target was the end of 2018. Now, my middle time target was the summer that we're going through right now. And my longest time period time target was like around October. So what happened was we hit my first time target, but it happened at the same time as my first price target of 5,000. And then we fell down to 3. So I felt that we fell a lot. We didn't fall enough early. So I really wanted it to last longer. And I didn't like the way that bear market ended. I don't trust this current run-up. Basically, I don't see new people coming into the market. Like when I do Google Trends on the words buy Bitcoin, it's almost non-existent. This is not what drove the old 2017 big run-up. I think the majority of this run-up in price has been the exit out of altcoins, getting out of Ethereum, getting out of Litecoin, getting out of Monero. And I think that has driven a lot of the run-up. And eventually, people stopped rotating out of those altcoins. And there was also, some institutional investors coming in, but I don't know if they're going to keep coming in if the price starts to dip. And if the rotation out of altcoins has stopped for the time being, and there aren't new buyers coming in, I think the market can severely pull back. So I am nervous right now as we continue to hold this $10,000 zone, thinking it can very well break below it. Now, when it breaks below it, which I am expecting, how low will it go? Will it go below 3,000? Unlikely, but I'm one of the few that still thinks it's possible. The most likely area is going to be in that $5,000 to $7,000 range, just enough to scare people, and then the smart people will buy that big dip.
Sure. No, I don't disagree with you, Tone. And yeah, you got a lot of flack for, people don't like that unpopular opinion when you say it's going down to $1,000, right? And, that's one of the things that you've got to deal with. And I mean, I actually just made a post with this in my group today about how, when you're right, people might thank you one time, but when you're wrong, they'll never let you forget it. And whether they bought or whether they didn't, or whether they believed you or whether they didn't, it doesn't matter. People want to hold you accountable and hold your feet to the fire for giving your best effort and giving your best work. Nobody's freaking right all the time. It's ridiculous, for people to hold people accountable on that level. Now, it kind of goes with the territory. What have you seen and how have you watched this space evolve, and compare that to the actual financial world inside in Wall Street and the stock market? And actually, before I give you too many questions at once, let's just start with the first one. What do you see right now with influencers? How has it changed so much, or how much have you seen it change?
To be honest, your specific question was, how have you seen this space evolve? Sure. And if I look back over the last 3 years, I would say the space has devolved more than it's evolved, because of this incredible misunderstanding of what a blockchain actually is. This fascination with altcoins, this fascination with databases that they think are decentralized that aren't, all the people that are believers in Ethereum and Cardano and fake Bitcoins like Bcash and BSV, people believing that Craig Wright is Satoshi. It's incredible to me. I totally underestimated the understanding of what Bitcoin is, what it stands for, why are you here?
Sure.
So many people are disingenuous and they just want to pump whatever they're holding. Anyone that believes in XRP as a legitimate, useful token going forward. So I've seen the space devolve a lot more than evolve. Now, what's happening in Bitcoin with the programming of the Bitcoin code under the hood, that's been incredible. But I expected that to be incredible. What I totally underestimated is the kind of stupid that took this ICO bubble to the 2017 highs. And it's so reminiscent of what happened in the dot-com bubble, where people were buying these dot-coms for $100 a share on the NASDAQ just because they had a dot-com in it.
Yep.
I have a whole presentation about this. There was a company that just changed its name from Norris Communication to eDigital. And this 6-cent stock ended up trading for $24 a share by the end of the year, in like 6 to 9 months. The price
That
of
is
the
a hell
stock,
of a name, by the way, though.
yeah. This is what was happening in the late 90s. You change your name, and we saw that in 2017.
Absolutely.
Some company in Brooklyn was called the Long Island Iced Tea Company that was publicly traded for like $1. They changed its name to the Long Island Blockchain, and their stock goes to like $14.
Absolutely.
This was the insanity we were dealing with. And
but to be fair on that, Tone, the people in crypto weren't buying that stock. That was people on the outside buying that stock on that level, but which pales in comparison to the stupidity that was in the ICO market. But yes.
Correct. Yeah, but it's the same concept, right? All of
Absolutely.
these ICOs came out in the crypto space saying, we're going to build a blockchain for this, and we're going to build a blockchain for that. And everyone is rushing in to buy it, right? Now, this is a general mentality that affects both markets, but you don't know how far this stupidity is going to go. And that's why it's best to stay away from it. And I don't see the stupidity going away. I still see way too many people that believe that Litecoin is going to come back, or that Dash is going to come back, or that these things are actually worth something. And they're still worth something. But I think until people fully admit that all of these altcoins are dying, I don't think Bitcoin is going to go up. Like it would have been so hard for the .com sector to rise when people don't know what company is legit or what company is not legit. And that was another criteria that I had for the ending of this current bear market and the winter, is that not only does Bitcoin need to sufficiently bottom, but altcoins need to basically die, because new people coming into the space need to know exactly why they're buying it and not lose all their money in fake Bitcoins.
Sure. No, and that's I respect your opinion a lot, Tone. I don't necessarily agree with everything you just said, but I cannot argue why you say that, because it makes complete sense when you put it on the surface that way. And I don't want to pretend like, I have that same level of understanding about how markets work that you do. You've been doing it for your entire life, since you were, 2005, I think is what you said. But regardless, let me kind of put this out there in front of you. Is it really that big of a deal that there are altcoins? I mean, so what?
It's not that big of a deal, but it's a big deal when people are, there's a difference between trading an asset to make more value and
Sure.
actually believing in that asset overtaking the world and trying to convince others to buy into it, right? Like here's another question. We all know BitConnect and we all know OneCoin, right? So
Sure.
So if you are involved in OneCoin or BitConnect, now there's something that you and you're trying to pitch it to me, right? Let's say you came to my house, you're a friend of mine, or maybe not a friend of mine, you're an acquaintance that I barely know you, and you're trying to sell me on BitConnect or OneCoin. I understand BitConnect and OneCoin, and I know that they're Ponzi schemes.
Sure.
But I need to understand, do you know that they're Ponzi schemes? Because you may be the one that got tricked into it. And you don't realize that you're also going to scam me without knowing that you're doing it,
So
right?
true. Yep.
So when it comes to a lot of these ICOs and those that believe in Ripple and those that are holding these old coins that have been just crushed in the last 6 months, that are still promoting them, the question is, do they know that they're not going to go back up and they're just trying to find a better exit? Or do they still actively believe in them? And the same thing goes for the developers and the creators of these coins. How do I know if they are looking to scam from the start, or do they actually believe in these altcoins? So if you actually believe in it, I guess there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. And I try to educate you that your belief is misplaced. It's kind of like believing that the Indian rupee is going to take over the US dollar. Like, I'm sorry, it's possible, but you can make
Unlikely.
that bet, but it's very, very unlikely. And the
Sure.
same thing is true for everything else. Now, 10 years ago, we were all talking about how the Chinese yuan might displace the US dollar, and it looked like it was heading that way,
Sure.
but their political environment has changed, and now I no longer think that is so. So these probabilities change all the time. Now, I never thought that Ethereum can take over Bitcoin, even when its market cap came very, very close to Bitcoin, and everybody kept talking about the flippening because I understood the inner workings of the two. So I never felt that way, and people aren't talking about it anymore. But even at that time, try to explain to people, hey, Ethereum can't scale. Ethereum has regulatory issues. These are all of its problems. And this is what I focused on. And if more people did that, maybe this bubble wouldn't have been so out of control.
Yeah, and those are good points. I say, and again, this is just kind of a devil's advocate, position, but I believe this to an extent too. The only thing holding ICOs back from actually being relevant in these crypto projects, what you're saying is true in so many respects, and I do agree with you. And it took me a long time just personally to come to terms with that because I did not come back. I didn't come from a financial background. I'm not a financial advisor. I've never been a full-time trader outside of when I first got into crypto, right? But think about this. If we remove regulation from the mix, which obviously regulation is a real deal, U.S. citizens are absolutely going to be subjected to the laws one way or the next, and these companies have to abide by them, or the U.S. SEC is going to come after them. But nevertheless, regulations are really the only thing holding these things back from being able to be profitable. And if there is a way around that one way or the next, is it possible that this turns into a stock market of its own where it's actual equity and you can actually own these things? And obviously, I think at that point it would change your mind.
See, I don't think so. I think regulation is the only thing that has prevented more scammy ICOs from coming out. And now that they have to go through that regulation, it makes it difficult for them to solicit unqualified money. Look, everyone has an idea. Everybody wants to start something. Everybody wants to build that idea. I'm not here to prevent that. What I try to educate people on is that when you put your money into an ICO, sure, Ethereum did well and it built a platform just to replicate Ethereum. That's not revolutionary. I'm sorry, guys. Ethereum built a platform to replicate the easy funding of other projects. Like when people read these white papers and they read these ICOs and blockchain projects, like the way I try to convince them is, hey, think about one of your cousins that like every Thanksgiving or every Christmas comes to you with another idea and he wants your money to help get it done. And you just laugh and you say, I'm not giving you any money. And in reality, he can probably explain his idea and it was probably a better conceptual project than most of what these ICOs are doing. And this is why there is regulations on who people can solicit money from. You can use your own money. You can take money from your friends and family. You can do that. There's no laws against that, right? But when it comes to soliciting money from people that you don't know for something that doesn't even yet exist, that's where regulation has to come in.
Sure,
Because
agreed.
otherwise, I know the libertarians say, hey, like don't tell people who to do it, because then the smart scammers will just take full advantage of everyone trying to convince them to donate and give money. There are very strict rules and regulations on nonprofit organizations that solicit money from strangers. I mean, that's like one of the biggest crimes. Like if you use if the government catches you, you're running a nonprofit organization to, let's say, save the rainforest that's burning, and then you use that money to buy a Lambo, you get into a lot of trouble.
True.
So that's all I wanted. Like I wasn't interested in new regulation. I just wanted the old regulation on the solicitation of money from strangers to apply to this space. And it's taken forever for the government to figure out that nothing is different. Everything is still about solicitation of money from strangers. Maybe those laws need to be a little bit looser, but those laws need to exist. And that's the problem that I have with it. There's nothing wrong with a lot of these projects. It's about how they're being financed. And if these projects weren't financed in a way where you can solicit money from strangers and then run away with that money and buy a Lambo, there would be a lot less of them, and there would be a lot better thought of before going to this ICO solicitation route.
Absolutely well said. Again, I may not completely agree with everything you said, but there's nothing that you've just said that isn't, coming from a authentic place, and you make a lot of sense there, Tone. Okay, so with everything we just talked about, clearly there's some bearishness in you, maybe just in the overall concept of the market. But how about long term? Like, where do you sit long term as far as obviously, and again, you've already stated you want to see these alts get crushed, you want to see Bitcoin kind of put out a lot of these fires, but the space overall, like, is there only room for Bitcoin long term then in your opinion at this point?
I believe that it's inevitable. It's not necessarily whether I want the altcoins to get crushed. I kind of do, but it's also because I think economically and technologically, it's inevitable for them to get crushed. Because from a decentralization perspective, all of those other projects, they are way more centralized, or they're centralized. If we think of, are you decentralized or are you not? As in, like, are you pregnant or are you not? Bitcoin can be considered decentralized. Nothing else, in my mind, can be considered decentralized. But within that something else, there is obviously levels. I think that all of these other projects, they are too dependent on a single developer. Some of them no longer even have a developer. I think the regulatory capture there is great. Great as in, like, it's very easy for the regulator to show up at an office or at a foundation and just basically capture or take over the whole project. And technologically, they don't have the kind of smart people that are working on Bitcoin, so they're not going to be able to do the same technological stuff that the other ones did. Why do certain countries have such an incredible GDP without any natural resources? How did Japan do it back in the 80s? It's not that big of an island. How did Hong Kong do it? How did Singapore do it? Because the smart people were there finding a way to make it happen. And we can say, yeah, every country has smart people. And we can look at Russia. I mean, I was born in the Soviet Union, and people get mad when I say this. And they're like, well, Russians are so smart and so smart. And I'm like, yes. And the smartest ones usually leave that country and they end up in America, or they end up in other countries where they're using their brain power to help the GDP of those nations, not the one that they were living in. Because most people still want to come to America to innovate. People do want to be somewhere else. Like, sure, there's a lot of smart people in China. China has a lot of people. But the question is, can your country retain the smartest people, or do they want to go to universities outside those nations? They want to go to an American university. They want to go to MIT. And when they do, they have friends there now. Like, they're looking to make partnerships. Where are they going to start the next Facebook, right? Where are they going to start the next Google? I think one of the Google founders is Russian, but Google's an American company. It's not a Russian company, right? So that's what it's all about. And the smart people are still working on Bitcoin, and that's what's going to make the big difference. And that's why I think Bitcoin is inevitably going to be the only one, the way we have one internet today. Like, imagine if you had to put this radio interview on 4 different internets that have completely different designs. It would be so annoying. Yep. I mean, everyone talks about how the market needs options, the market needs choices. That's another big debate that I have. People seem to compare Bitcoin to a car. Well, we don't have one car. We have, otherwise everyone will be driving the Ford Model T from over 100 years ago. We have all these cars. And I'm like, no, but we're still driving the same Ford Model T. The concept of a car is what Bitcoin is. It's not the car. It's the concept of a car. And here we are still driving cars 100 years later. Like the difference between a Tesla today and the original Model T is nowhere near the difference between a car and a horse. Like on a scale of 1 to 100, the difference between the very first car and the Tesla is like 1 versus 99 when it comes to the difference between a horse and a car. So that's what people have to realize. And it's not about that. And the world, like, yes, we want choice in brands, but we don't want choice in stuff like how annoying is it? You travel around the world, there's 4 or 5 different outlets, right? So now you have to carry a converter. Like Apple still can't give you the same charging plug between your computer and your phone.
I don't want to.
Well, exactly, right? But the consumers want that, right? So don't tell me that consumers want choice. Consumers want protocols. They want choice whether they want an Apple phone or an Android phone or built by Samsung or built by Google. But they want their damn charger to be the same across all the phones.
Absolutely. Tone, I like the way that you explain things, man. You've got this really analogy-driven, explanations for most of these things. All right, so I mean, I'm listening to you, Tone, and like I said, I've been following you for a little bit. I've watched you progress. I've watched you establish yourself in this space. What were some of the biggest obstacles that you had to face coming through it, and has it been something that you've continued to want to do? Have you almost stepped away at any time? I just know on my Facebook group, we got 116,000 people. We're really active. It's a great group. Crypto Coin Trader, shout out to you guys. But at times it can be exhausting, especially in 2018. How have you dealt with some of these things, man?
Wow, that's a good question. The greatest obstacle. To be honest, I don't want to sound like fake Satoshi conceited. I don't think I had crazy obstacles in my space. I'm very, very happy that I realized the path to Bitcoin. I'm more grateful that I didn't, even back to the Roger Ver debates that you mentioned. And I, was friends with Roger. I was hanging out with Roger. We were still kind of on good terms. It's not that we hate each other. But Roger and I were hanging out and speaking at the same conferences, going back to 2015 days or 2016 days before this whole split in Bitcoin. And I wouldn't call this an obstacle, but more like the realization of the path for Bitcoin, because I don't think I would be able to live with myself right now, being in this space, if let's say I allowed Roger to convince me that Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin back in 2016, instead of debating Roger on it back in February of 2017, a few months before the fork, trying to convince him not to go in his direction. Imagine, I think that I wouldn't call that the biggest obstacle, but I think I called that my biggest challenge was making sure that I stuck on the right side of Bitcoin. And for some people, that was very, very easy. And for me, it wasn't hard. But when I came into the space, I believed in altcoins too. I remember the very first panel I was on, it was called Bitcoin versus altcoins. And that was back in 2014. In May of 2014 in Hong Kong. It was my first conference I ever spoke at, kind of kicked off my career. And I guess that was the biggest obstacle early on, and luck had a lot to do with it. I attended a conference in April of 2014 in New York, and I just sat in the first row and I asked good questions. And the questions that I asked were noticed by the conference organizer and by a man named Ernie Hancock, that has a libertarian radio show out of Phoenix. I got a message from Ernie later on because he got my contact information wanting to interview me because he thought I was important. Now, at the time, I was a nobody. I was a guy working on Wall Street attending my first Bitcoin conference. And during the interview, he remembered why he was interviewing me, because I just asked good questions. But I was able to use that interview, the fact that, hey, people want to interview me, and I sent it to the conference organizers to get my first speaking gig. And that speaking gig kind of, kicked off my career as a content creator, Cointelegraph picked me up to write for them. Brave New Coin was just launching their new site and market analysis data site. I helped them build the BLX index back in like 2016. It's already been completely redone with smarter people than me when it comes to building indices. But in the beginning, as a startup, I had some experience in doing that, so I did that. I wouldn't call those obstacles, but I call those opportunities. Sometimes there's no such thing as luck. It's just taking advantage of the opportunity in front of you, right? And I took the opportunities in front of me. Back then, I believed in these altcoins like Darkcoin, which became Dash, and Litecoin, and some of the other ones. But by late 2014, I had realized that it's only going to be Bitcoin, and I understood why it's going to be Bitcoin. And that was the right path to go. And I've been trying to keep people on the right path ever since. And the only challenges now are like dealing with trolls, because when you become too public and you start to become a little too popular, and you got to revamp stuff.
And you're bold too. You say bold things.
Oh yeah. And but
it's the Russian in you.
Problem. Yeah, that's true too. Like people from that region, I just say what's on my mind. And the other challenge right now is trying to, this balance, right? I feel like I do too much in the space. I publicly speak everywhere about Bitcoin, but that doesn't pay you any money. So in order to keep that going, I can either, destroy my savings, and no one wants to spend their total Bitcoin position, right? Sure. I mean, you want to hold on to as much Bitcoin as you can.
Yep.
So what do? That was also one of my biggest regrets. I quit my job in very early 2015. In fact, I told my job that I was leaving at like, hey, I don't think this is working out. I'm not really, but I said, hey, I'm not ready. I don't really want to quit today. And this was like February or early February or something. I'm like, but I just want to, I was too nice of a guy. I'm like, hey, maybe we can transition me out. I'm looking to leave sometime in the summer. And I said this to them in like February. And this was like a job that was paying me well over $100,000.
Sure.
And the next reply I got from my boss is like, okay, let us discuss it. And they'll come back to me the next day and they're like, yeah, we feel there's no reason. We feel like it's better to just pull the Band-Aid. How about you get going in like 2 weeks, right?
Oh,
so I wanted, right. So
yeah.
I wanted
surprise.
I wanted to stay there like 3 more months in order to turn that salary into Bitcoin.
You were just trying to do the right thing, right? You were just been like, yeah, guys, look, I'm going to get out of here pretty soon. Just might want to start looking for my position. Like, no, F that, get out of here.
Right, exactly. And
it's kind of dirty, really.
It's the world of finance. There's like some private information. Anyway, it was fine.
Sure.
And this was, and I really regretted that decision, not only for those 3 months. I'm like, man, why didn't I wait till early 2016? Because I could have been converting that ridiculous salary into a $300 Bitcoin instead of suddenly having no money. The fact that I didn't even get any kind of settlement or unemployment because I wasn't fired, I wasn't let go.
Yep.
And
you were spending your Bitcoin all the while. You were doing the opposite.
Exactly. So instead of buying more Bitcoin at its bottom price of 2015, I had no choice but to spend some. And so these were just some of the mistakes that I'd done along the way. And you learn from those mistakes, and those were challenges. And right now it's balancing. Like a lot of people, what I'm known for is trading and technical analysis and teaching trading, but an unreasonable amount of people make fun of me for being a trader that doesn't trade. But that's because they don't understand my lifestyle is not trading. I don't sit at home trading. I do interviews like this, and I travel all the time, and I speak about Bitcoin, and I socialize, and I enjoy that lifestyle more than I did sitting in front of a computer in some basement with 5 monitors. Trading.
Not to mention, you've had probably some moderate success in this, and that the pressure. I mean, I bet you if you needed to make $1 tomorrow to eat, you might have a different perspective on when you trade next, right? But your circumstances have allowed this.
Of course, and I enjoy what I do now, and I just think that educating people about Bitcoin is just more important. It doesn't matter. People say, well, you could be so rich if you were a good trader and you were trading. I'm like, but like, it's not about that. It's about, being happy in life. And just like, how many lawyers do you know that quit being a lawyer? How many and moved on to something else? Just because you can make ridiculous money doesn't mean that you're happy about it, right? And a lot of people with a lot of money, they're not that happy. You just have to make enough money to be happy with your life.
Bro, money only matters when you don't have any. I'm convinced, right? So when you have money and you don't, and everything is immediately taken care of, and you got something where what satisfies you, but the moment you make a little bit more, your standards change immediately, and anything underneath that is a loss. And it's best to. I mean, this is just my perspective. Obviously, I know people who feel very differently, and they're just hungry for money all the time. I just love the way that the crypto space, at its purest core, the way that, like, some of the ways that you're speaking about it right now are reminiscent to some of the guys that got me into Bitcoin originally. And you're kind of a flashback in that way, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with why I find a lot of fondness talking to you, Tone. But I won't keep it too much longer, man. I got one more question for you, and then I'm going to get into my quick fire. I told you about that here shortly too. And I would really kind of go back, and I really want to get just to kind of get some clarity for the audience who's going to be listening to this, because obviously you have big companies like IBM. They're devoting a lot of money and a lot of things to blockchain. You've got Libra with Facebook, and you've got so many other different avenues that this is stretching. And without getting too detailed into those projects, I specifically say that there's actually only 4 real use cases, at least in today's day and time, Tone, and that is gaming, the gaming community in the gaming world. I don't know if you're a gamer, if you've ever played any video games, supply chain, and politics. And then, of course, lastly would be currency, which we already are using, and it is that. And I completely agree. As currency goes, Bitcoin is the only thing needed. That's how I feel. I share a lot of your same context and how you say things. I share that same sentiment. But there are those 3 other. Supply chain, I think, is absolutely relevant, and there is a capitalistic opportunity if the coin is built right. And it's got to fit in. It's got to be regulated, and it's got to fit into those categories. But that day may not have come yet. There's some out there, whatever. Gaming, and I say this. You go look at, like, how big of a moneymaker Fortnite is. There's a way to monetize that through the blockchain, where you can actually transfer and use that as digital currency that's back and forth exchangeable with other players, and still be able to make a profit, especially if you're a miner.
They can just use Bitcoin, right? Like, that's the thing.
Yeah,
like the gaming part, I mean, they would, because otherwise they're just going to create another currency, and that currency won't be decentralized, because what happened to Bitcoin, the way Satoshi launched it, and the way it evolved in its first 12 to 18 months, you just can't replicate that. And that's what makes Bitcoin unique. So sure. If there is a place for blockchain in gaming, it's probably just Bitcoin.
Okay. All right. So going to currency, and and this is my only rebuttal. And I honestly did not feel this way until I heard John McAfee say it. But if you're at the house and you've got a plumber coming to the house, this is the example he used, right? And that plumber comes, fixes your sink, and he leaves, and you pay him in Bitcoin. And so that plumber now has access and knows your address and knows how much Bitcoin you have and all your business. Whereas that may not be something I want to know. Now, obviously, this is just one circumstance, but the moment your blockchain address is out there, the moment that it's being reported, the moment that now the government knows everything that they want to know about you, because they can track all these things and put the missing pieces together. How do you combat that with the maximalism in this case? Because I never thought about it in this perspective, and when McAfee said it, it did bring some awareness to something I had not considered. So now I've kind of shifted my opinion, where like something like Monero might be more important.
Sure. Well, that might have been partially true back when McAfee said it, but
he just said it like on my show like a couple days ago. That's so.
Then he's just wrong. Now, if you're still using the same wallet from, let's say, 4 years ago, then yes. But in the future, in the near future, let's say next year, you're probably going to be paying that. You're probably going to be paying that plumber through the Lightning Network, and Fair. In which case. You will not be able to trace to how much Bitcoin you actually have. And there are lots of tools now that aren't very popular yet. But in the future, I would say within the next 12 to 18 months, that plumber will have absolutely no idea, and he will not be able to trace it. The people that are building these second They're not at the protocol level the way Monero does it and the way Zcash does it. And it would have been potentially nice if Satoshi did it that way from the start, but there were reasons why he didn't do it that way from
Agreed.
the start. For all of the advantages that you have of anonymity at the protocol level, you're also blind to see what's going on at the protocol level. So one of the problems with Monero and Zcash is that what if someone is creating extra Monero that you don't know about? So there are reasons not to do this at the protocol level.
That's a great point. That's a good point.
And because you just don't know what's going on under the hood. Now, if you do it as a second layer, yes, it's not as private in the fundamental layer, but all of these transactions, especially small ones like paying your plumber, they're all going to be, they can be, what all you have to do is download the right wallet to use. And yeah, if you find like the crappiest wallet, it's almost like saying, hey, you know, if you go and buy a computer with Windows XP, which I actually really like, the old Windows or Windows 95, yeah, using Windows 95 is very, very unsafe because because hackers know how to get into that system because it's no longer updatable. So it's the same thing here. Yeah, if you go and use Bitcoin the way it was used 3 years ago, it's very, very unsafe and very unprivate. But if you use Bitcoin with the latest technology, especially technology that's about to come and become more user-friendly and more adoptable, then the privacy will be good enough. You don't need 100% privacy. You need privacy that's good enough. If Bitcoin has 95% of Monero's privacy, everyone's going to be happy.
No, I completely agree with that. And obviously, I mostly agree with your side of things too, Tone. And I don't want to give the impression that I have become a maximalist in certain respects, but I believe that the word maximalist has also evolved. But that's another story, and I need to get you started because I know you got to get rolling here pretty soon. But I told you I was going to have this quick fire episode at the end, right? So we'll go ahead and get that started. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
All right, cool, man. First, hey, before we do this, man, I just want to say I've really appreciated the insight, Tone. You've killed it, man. I think that you've brought a perspective that has been missing in a lot of ways, and I know you're very public, but not everybody knows who you are yet still, and you're getting bigger every day. And but anyways, let's go ahead and get started. Number one, have aliens ever visited Earth?
Yes. Statistically, they have to.
Fair. It could have been when the dinosaurs were here too.
It could have been yesterday. It could have been before the dinosaurs. But I do respect technology. I do respect the advancement of technology, and I do think that if there's a generation that has 1 million years on us, their technology is unreal.
Maybe we're the aliens, right? You just never know. You never know. All right. That's again.
Well, we will probably. If the Earth doesn't get destroyed due to some geological event, we could be for future planets in maybe 10,000 years.
I would be disappointed in mankind if we did not. At some point. At least to Mars, right? At least. A minimum. Anyways, all right. Bitcoin as a political party.
I don't think so. I'd like a political party that is very open to Bitcoin and utilizes Bitcoin.
Sure.
But as a political party, that would be weird to me because then it gives Bitcoin like a centralized authority, or people think that they are a centralized authority, and Bitcoin doesn't have centralized authorities.
Good point. I like that perspective. All right. Favorite movie of all time, Tone?
Oh, maybe The Usual Suspects with
Classic.
Memento, a close runner-up.
Memento. That's another. That one hasn't been said yet. Hey, way to pull that one out. All right. Favorite sports team or favorite sport if you don't have necessarily.
I think you can answer that.
I don't want to.
Oh man, I love college football, and it's funny, because I never cared about college football until I ended up at a football school. Like my undergrad didn't have any real sport teams. I played volleyball, but it was like Division III.
Sure.
Didn't have anything Division I. And then you get to grad school at Florida State, and you're like, wow, this is why people watch on Saturday. This is what people do on Saturdays. So college football is the one sport that I really watched. When I was a kid, it was basketball. Sure. And I got to go with my school, man. I got to go with the Seminoles. I have nothing against the Gators though, because I'm not a native Floridian. So
Gators not there.
I only root against the Gators when they play the Seminoles. Otherwise, I root for the Gators because I want the two teams to be undefeated going into the last week of the season.
Fair enough. I was going to talk some smack, but that was a nice answer of you, Tone. So I'll let you go on this one. I wasn't going to bring up last year's game or anything.
I didn't watch it.
I don't blame you. I would have watched it either.
Oh God.
Hey, Nate, I'm just joking. You handled that question really well, and I appreciate that, Tone. The respect, it's mutual with you only. I'll leave it at that. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right, I got two more for you. Okay, second to last one. Bitcoin to $1 million. Yes or no?
Yes.
Is that a absolutely or is that a probably?
I have about two. You said 2 million or 1 million?
Just one. 1 million.
1 million. Okay.
I said to $1 million.
Oh, to $1 million. Okay.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin $1 million. I am. Oh, this is going to be bad. I have a greater than a 50% probability that it will get to $1 million at some point in the future. Hopefully, I'm still alive. But I do believe in the future of Bitcoin, or I wouldn't be in this space working as hard as I do the last 5 years.
You know, and again, I don't want to keep it too much longer, but this is just a thought. I actually was just thinking about this the other day. As many people start using Bitcoin and as many wallets that are available, isn't the dust going to really start collecting up? Like, isn't it going to really be substantial where it's going to, I mean, it's already made a dent in how much Bitcoin's out there. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. But eventually, especially if you've got 25 million people using Bitcoin, you're never going to be able to get rid of all this dust unless, I don't know, man. It just seems like the dust alone is going to really make a difference.
Well, and this is why the second layer of solutions are being built. Like all this dust should not be clogging up the Bitcoin blockchain. This is what the Bcash people don't understand. The dust shouldn't be there. There should be no dust. For example, in a Lightning Network, you can send Satoshis around. In the future, when there is 1 billion people are using Bitcoin, you'll be able to divide. You'll be like right now, the reason why one Bitcoin is only divisible into 100 million Satoshis is due to a computer science limit. You just can't divide that number any further. But inside the Lightning Network, you can take a Satoshi and you can subdivide that.
Yep.
So
the 16th digit, right? Someone was just talking about this, probably even further.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. So in the future, I don't really want to be talking about $1 million Bitcoin. That sounds like, that just sounds strange. In the future, we're going to be talking about Satoshis. We're going to be talking about bits. Yep. Remember, right now, with a $10,000 Bitcoin, 1 bit is 1 penny. So I'd rather talk about, hey, when is 1 bit going to be worth $1? Because when 1 bit's worth $1, that means 1 Bitcoin is $1 million.
Absolutely.
But you don't want to think of it that way. And I think that after the next bull run,
it's a lot more reasonable thinking it that way too.
Yeah. So we might just start moving the convention into bits. Like, hey, how many bits is that? Or hey, how many bits are you transferring? And one day, 1 bit will equal $1. And doesn't that sound so much better? Because that's the same thing as 1 Bitcoin equals $1 million.
Well, I remember, was it just a few years ago for us, we were saying that about a penny. Like, we would love for it to be a penny one day, right? I first bought Bitcoin when it was $1,000, November 2013, Tone. And guess what? It went straight down to 250 freaking bucks. And I felt like an idiot. Right. But fortunately, I was buying $5, $10, $15 at a time. And then I just forgot about it for a year and a half, almost 2 years. Then I got a new phone. I downloaded the Coinbase app. Oh, shit. Life's good. Right.
Well, yeah,
I like this. I like this Bitcoin. Anyways, that's another
and
story.
You're not the only one, right? Like the first time I picked up a few Satoshis was at $250 in April of that year. And then it crashed to $50.
Yep. I mean, those were man. Looking back, I mean, do I care that I got it at 1,000 or 250? I mean, yeah, I could have got 4 extra Bitcoin, sure, but I don't think of it that way. I think about I got Bitcoin really cheap, when it first started. All right, last question, Tone. Get you out of here, man. What's the next conference you're attending?
Oh, so the next conference I'm attending and speaking at is the Black Blockchain Summit in Washington, D.C. I'm it's at Howard University. I think I'm one of 3 or 4 white speakers at this event, so it's going to be great. And I like speaking at events where the audience is not familiar with me. There's really 3 types of events. There's events for where all my fans come. These are the Bitcoin Maximalist events like Honey Badger and BitBlock Boom and my own Unconfiscatable. So these are the events for basically where everyone that shows up knows who I am. Then there are events that focus on these ICOs and new projects and blockchains. But then there are these other events that have a completely new audience. And those are the ones that I really like going to, because then I go on stage and the whole audience goes, well, who's this guy? And then after my presentation, they're like, oh, I should be following this guy. So those are the kinds of conferences I really like. And I started my own, like the ones that obviously the ones I care about the most are the ones that I put together, which is Unconfiscatable, going to happen in February. But a few months before that, I'm putting together this event called the Financial Summit. It's in Bali. It's at a very high-end resort.
Bali, huh?
It's only for about 30 people. It's very small, but it's designed for traders, traders that have made a career in trading in order to connect them with potential funds that could take their strategies to the next level. So it's a way to connect talented traders with funds looking for talented traders and trading ideas. And I don't think anything like that exists. And that's what I'm working on. It's called the Financial Summit. You can check it out at tonevays.com. And you can find me on YouTube as Tone Vays.
I was just about to let you plug yourself. Where can they find you? What's your Twitter handle?
Same thing. Everything is Tone Vays. Just be careful. So many imposters, so many scammers. Yes. If a Tone Vays is messaging you through Facebook Messenger, it's not me. It is probably a scammer. They're everywhere. Telegram, Instagram. It's
everywhere.
It's
no,
really,
agreed.
Really frustrating. And that's what Bitcoin did. You know, it was so hard for scammers to just get you to send them money. But now with Bitcoin, they just pretend to be somebody famous and like, hey, I will double your money. Just send it to me. And they trust you because they trust you on TV.
Yeah. And Tone, actually, I think my first interaction with you was when I sent you my first 0.25 Bitcoin, right? I was supposed to get a half Bitcoin back. And anyways, but I'll take that up with you later. All right, Tone. Boy. Hey, and you're also, by the way, you also have your own podcast, and that is what, Crypto Scams?
Yeah, so Crypto Scam is just one of the series I do on my YouTube channel. Sometimes I do 2 videos a day. So my YouTube channel has hour-long shows about trading Bitcoin and traditional markets. It has 1-hour shows about the news where me and a few other people break down the latest news. I have a law show where I bring on a bunch of lawyers. And Crypto Scam, I haven't done shows in a while, but that's where I do research on a project in the space. And then I sit down with another expert, someone smarter than me, and we talk about, let's say, why Dash is bad, why Ethereum is bad, why Ripple is bad. So that's what Crypto Scam is all about in another episode, maybe this weekend. I haven't done them in like 6 months, though.
Absolutely, man. Well, make sure you let me know, and I'll be paying attention. I'll share it for you. All right, Tone, Bitcoin Radio. Thanks again, Tone, for coming on. We appreciate you being here for the audience. I appreciate you. You know, man, it was great to hear your perspective. I learned something today. Hopefully you had fun. I mean, I appreciate you not going too hard on the Gators.
Oh, it's hard, man. We've been bad lately. There was a good stretch.
Yeah, y'all won the national championship.
But hey, remind me, man. Actually, I'm so busy these days. Make sure you text me before they play to make sure I watch the next game.
I will, man. Oh, don't worry, because I think the Gators are going to be decent this year, and I'll make sure I tell you about it. All right, maybe we can have a little Bitcoin bet. Who knows? All right, until next time.
That'd be good.
Hey, we'll see you soon, Tone. I appreciate you. Maybe we'll come on again sometime. And Bitcoin Radio, hey, look, take care of the cryptoverse. It's our job. It's our responsibility, and nobody else is going to do it. Until next time.